We saying that like Tylenol has nothing to do with the vaccines and autism? Like if we took vaccines out of the picture, we wouldn't really be finding the same findings that all of these studies over the last 3 to 4 weeks, because it's been like an explosion over the past month. Like, oh, we found, the missing link in autism, and it's actually Tylenol, this drug
Yeah,
that's been
well,
around for, eons.
all these things that they're all coordinated. It's kind of like the Tylenol and autism thing. The Peter McCullough's paper recently came out. It's becoming more. There's more papers coming out. It's becoming more in the spotlight in the public arena. Once everybody starts realizing, yeah, autism and vaccines, right? And at some point in time, they're going to go back to Tylenol. Well, how did Tylenol get? Why do we get on Tylenol, right? And then that's where that's going to lead us. It's going to lead us down the path into scientific corruption because they should have, 100% should have controlled for this confounder called vaccines in all the Tylenol studies. They never controlled for it. When I was doing my NPH at Hopkins, um, it was like drilled into my head over and over and over again that you have to control for any possible variable that anybody could claim, so that what you're finding in your study isn't, isn't that someone nobody can say, oh no, it may not be true because it could be something else. So you have to control for it in your study. You have to take basically what you do is sort of you mathematically make it equal in both sides. That's really what it comes down to. Whatever the confounder is, you sort of equalize it in both sides of the equation. So that can't be the thing in the background that's causing, your outcome instead of what you're after. And so we all know that vaccines have been, people have been claiming vaccines have caused autism for many, many years, since at least the 1990s and probably even the 80s, actually. People complained to their congressman about their kid getting autism from vaccines. So it's a well-known thing. So even if all the investigators in these studies, if they were 100% convinced that, you know, autism has nothing to do with the vaccines, right? Then they would have just controlled for it and just said and just put the whole thing to rest to say, or let's just say put it to rest that people can't say that their finding against Tylenol wasn't true, you know. But you know what I'm saying? Does that
So
make sense?
are we saying that like Tylenol has nothing to do with the vaccines and autism? Like if we took vaccines out of the picture, we wouldn't really be finding the same findings that all of these studies over the last 3 to 4 weeks, because it's been like an explosion over the past month. Like, oh, we found, the missing link in autism, and it's actually Tylenol, this drug
Yeah.
that's been
Well,
around for, eons.
I'll say it. I'll break it down here. You know, the if if you have a mother who will refuse to vaccinate their kid because they're anti-vaccine, more likely to be anti-pharmaceutical, right? That mother is going to be the same mother that's probably not going to take Tylenol during a pregnancy. Vice versa. Somebody who's like against pharmaceuticals during pregnancy may be more likely to be the mother who's not going to vaccinate their kid.
Hmm.
That's an association that that exists. I would say it's probably a weak association, but it's an association nonetheless. So if they didn't include the vaccines in the data at all. They just ignored it, which is what they did. They'll find a weak association between women who took Tylenol during pregnancy and autism, if in fact the vaccines are causing autism. But you'll never know it's the vaccines because it's those mothers that wouldn't vaccinate. I'm sorry, that wouldn't take Tylenol, more likely not to vaccinate. The mothers that did take Tylenol, more likely to vaccinate. So you'll find an association. Again, it's going to be a weak association because they're not 100%, right? In fact, and so whenever you find weak associations, guess what? You have to look for confounders because it's very likely there's a confounder causing it and not actually what what that intervention was. It's not likely to be the Tylenol because it's such a weak association. So some of the studies showed a weak association, and some of the studies didn't show any association. So that's as weak as you can get. So, but if they controlled for vaccines, right? In other words, they basically put, the vaccinated and unvaccinated, equal sides of both equations. You would find zero association with Tylenol. That's what would show up. If in fact, again, if this is based on my knowledge that there is a strong association between autism and vaccines, and I do believe it's the most significant contributor. If that's true, then the fact that they didn't control for it is a big problem. And again, this the reason why is because it's a glaringly obvious thing that they didn't control for it. It was an intentional thing because they should have control for vaccines. When you're talking autism, why not? If you don't believe that autism's vaccine has any association, control for it.
It's like they brought so much attention to the fact that there's a connection between vaccine and autism by not controlling for it.
Right, right. That's what's going to show. That's what's going to come out. Like
Hmm.
up until now, no, everybody it's been suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. So like people didn't question, people just didn't. They assumed that the data is there that doesn't cause autism, right? But so like and nobody it's been under the radar. The Tylenol and autism papers not a controlling for autism has been under the radar. But
Right.
what's going to do, it's going to bring it into the forefront of the public discussion. They go, well, what about Tylenol? I thought Tylenol caused it. Oh, wait a second, they didn't control for vaccines. Are you kidding me? And every expert in the world is going to say, well, they should have controlled for vaccines.
It's kind of like they were putting lipstick on a pig, right? They were like, oh, here's this like big, ugly problem. And let me find every possible solution for the problem that isn't actually going to address the problem.
Right, right,
And Tylenol, for whatever reason, is a much easier target right now. They clearly don't have what it takes for various reasons to tackle the actual problem because these people know how to do studies, right? I mean, more difficult studies than connecting autism and the adjuvants and the excipients in vaccines and autism, more difficult studies than that have been done. So it's not like they don't have the intelligence and they don't have the lab equipment like they have, right? They have the raw materials to do this, but there is some situation that prevents them from doing what they're trained to do. So when we were talking about it last time, you were saying like, well, the reason why they're probably doing this is to kind of slowly get the public used to the fact that there is an association between autism and vaccines because the like groupthink, the hypnosis
yeah, right.
is just too powerful. But honestly, it doesn't look like it's going to break anytime soon because we've had so many things come up. And so we were just talking about this before we got on. All of these things are happening, and it actually doesn't seem like there is a lot of movement towards a true change, like a true correction.
Right. Well, I think what they did though, they really accomplished something by when they come out with Tylenol and autism, they just put in the public consciousness that it may be a pharmaceutical, maybe a drug, a common drug that people use, could be a cause of autism. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So in other words, just because you don't see any results of anything yet, didn't mean they didn't accomplish their mission. They just basically planted a seed. Once they plant a seed, in order to wake up people, it's a process. You can't just snap your fingers and have somebody believe something that they didn't believe their whole life, right?
But people are obsessed with science as a religion and doctors as demigods. So you'd think that if science said, "Hey, we now have this proof, this scientific proof that autism is caused by vaccines and here's the peer-reviewed literature," with people being so kind of consumed by the idea of science being godlike, they would that would be it. That would be enough.
But it goes against everything that they were believing to begin with, right? So the godlike science has told them vaccines are safe for so long. So all
Mm.
of a sudden, just flip a switch, and the godlike entity is saying the exact 100% opposite. And we've been forcing vaccines down everybody's throat. You can't get into school, you can't get into summer camps without vaccines for your kids, like all of it. It's to just flip a switch and saying, "Oh, the narrative is exactly the opposite." That people can't take. So that's why I think they're doing this process. It's a process, of waking up the population.
So it'd be like an existential crisis for people to go
Yes.
from one spiritual belief to another spiritual belief. The reality is that every day there are babies that are being vaccinated, over vaccinated, medicated, over medicated,
Hmm.
and their immune systems like clearly can't handle it. We have that proof. We have that data that unvaccinated children do like far better in all these chronic illnesses than vaccinated children. So that's out. That cat's out of the bag there. I mean, it's a half step further to understand the why.
Right. But I think that when you say the cat's out of the bag, there needs to be more discussion in the public arena because not everybody is up to speed with it. And the majority of people are still not, honestly.